Welcome back to the DC pod. I'm Christian, alongside me, Darcy, where we cover all things basketball. Now, it's been a minute since we last did a pod, so we are pumped to be back. Darcy, we've got to start, as always, the listeners will know, the Mavs. How would you assess the last week to 10 days for your boys?
Well, there's a big difference between a week and 10 days because the last week has been trash, basically, from the boys. Couple of no-show performances, but if you extend that to 10 or to 12 days, I think we're still okay. We're hovering around 500 lately since the All-Star break, and I think we're not far away from potentially a big run. I think I'm not really concerned about this mini little bump. I think that we're going to come home as strong as any team in the league.
Yeah, well, you do make a good point, because if not for the insane Luka game winner against Memphis, you guys could have lost potentially, I think, 4 in a row or 5 in a row. So that does definitely turn out to be quite a crucial win for you guys, not only based on the opponent and how you guys will kind of be in a bit of a race to fight with them for seeding at the back end of the West there. But also because, obviously the next 2 or 3 games after that, there was a loss to Philly, my boys. There was a loss to Sacramento the other day, and there was a loss to someone else I can't think of that was bad. Houston. Well, wasn't there someone else before that? Or was it Houston?
Well,
I feel
there was definitely a loss to Houston. The Spurs beat us with the DeMar game.
That's the Spurs. Yeah. So that's right. So it went the game winner, then you lost to the DeRozan game winner, then Philly, then Sacramento, I think.
Yeah. Well, before that, we lost to Houston. We lost to Houston in between a victory against Utah and one against Milwaukee. So no,
you're right.
You beat the good teams, but then you got to take care of the not so good teams.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of puts you guys in an interesting spot. You say you think a run's around the corner. I mean, what I found BS about the last game you played against Sacramento is because I was on Dallas, I had him. I think I might have had him first half, -7 or -8, something like that. And Terrence Davis does nothing, and then shows up that game and has like 24 points, doesn't miss from deep. It's so Sacramento. So that was an unfortunate thing to come up against. Fox got hot, and obviously when that happens, he's like any player, can suddenly become unguardable.
That was a KP up and down game. He had a couple of really good games, and then like a 2 for 15 shooting, and that's just the kind of stuff that we can't have in those lapses from him. One thing that's really crucial about Dallas coming down the stretch is, like, every time it feels like KP has a couple of good games, and then he rests one, and then it feels like he needs a game or two to get himself back into the groove. It's like he's not getting that constant flow of good games back to back to back. But I can understand why they're holding him out, because, we need him to play 7 straight games in the playoffs, not 7 straight games in the regular season. But it is very frustrating to watch those. Like, game against Sacramento, Rashawn Holmes is out. Like, why is Kristaps not scoring 30 in that game? It gets frustrating.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how you guys go today. Surely at home against Detroit, you just like foot to the throat, just absolutely hammer them, statement win. And then you guys can start to get back on track. But Detroit do play hard, so that's no guarantee in itself. Detroit are very feisty for whatever reason. So look, we will discuss a little bit about the MVP race, because obviously that's been a hot topic of debate as of late. It's starting to get to crunch time, really, with the regular season wrapping up. So we'll look at some play-in scenarios that we think are likely to go down, and how the outcome will be heading into the playoffs. And then we'll finish off with guess that player. So kind of similar to what we're speaking about before the pod, who he play for is what they do on TNT, but I'll hit Darcy with some clues, and he'll have a couple of chances at guessing what player that is. So that's the agenda, the rundown for today's pod, and let's get cracking.
Let's do it.
Lead pass. Whoa! Stop it! Stop it! Do not do it like that! What are you doing, Dragons? Parker. J.O. Smith! We just saw a man play. Harden, step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Okay, so the MVP debate, the two that are leading the way, and depending on who you want to speak to, it's in whatever order, but it's obvious that it's Jokic and Embiid. But Steph has been making a lot of noise with his ridiculous play as of late. Where do you sit with it all, Das?
I think every year it becomes a battle of what is the criteria? You know, what are we actually giving this to the MVP for? Because I feel like Steph has kind of shown everyone that he is the most clutch, best player in the league. In the last stretch, it just feels like, which player would you rather have on your team in a one-off game in the playoffs? I think Steph has kind of shown that he's that guy. And LeBron showed that he was that guy at the beginning of the year, pre-injury. So in terms of the MVP race where it is right now, I don't know if Embiid can ever win an MVP, just because if people are going to hold it against him that he's not playing certain games, then he's never ever going to win any awards, because the fact is he needs to rest. Like he's heavy, he's big, he takes a big physical pounding. That's his game. So from that standpoint, you know, that might write off Embiid, but the dominance that he plays with, he doesn't necessarily rely on his all-around game to beat teams every night. Like he has an advantage over the other team every game, and it's physically in underneath the basket, rebounding, scoring, drawing fouls. And he does that every game. And it's tough not to say that that's the most valuable asset when his team's sitting top of the Eastern Conference, and every night he's putting up insane numbers, scoring the basketball. When you compare him to Jokic, they're both absolutely worthy of it. Jokic might be a little bit more durable potentially, what he's done this year. And now that they're missing Murray, it kind of it shines a light on just how valuable he is. Even, you know, they could lose Murray like they have and still be such a strong team, and the way that he's been playing hasn't really changed at all. If you take Jokic out of that team, I don't even know what that looks like, because it's all built around him and the efficiency that he is playing with, and he's filling up the stat sheet across the board more than Embiid. Like more assists, he's actually getting just as many rebounds, if not more, I think, because he's playing the whole game. He's scoring at a high level, shooting over 40% from three. Like, and it's a good argument to have. I think both of them are worthy for it. I think for me, I think Embiid's got the slight edge at this stage. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so to sort of take the bias out of it, I know a ton of people are leaning heavily towards Jokic based on that availability factor. I think it's going to come down to seeding. So if Jokic can manage to keep the Nuggets in that top four, I think it's going to be hard to not give him the MVP. But if Denver was to slip and say fall out of the top four to the fifth seed, and Embiid can keep playing the way he is and Philly hold on to that one seed, well, then shit, if we don't have a serious discussion on our hands already, then I think we will. If that scenario plays out, it'll be hard to not give it to the guy that's leading the way for the number one team in the East. And I think if that scenario is to play out, you can probably pretty comfortably overlook the fact that Embiid's missed 18 games this season and Jokic hasn't missed any. And I'd assume down the stretch, you can probably add 2 or 3 more games to that for Embiid as well, that he'll probably miss for just rest purposes. So it's probably going to end up being 20 plus games that Embiid's going to miss. And I can see Jokic being rested for a couple games if that 4 seed's locked up at the end of the regular season for Denver. But I think seeding is going to be the number one thing that's going to determine this in the end, because for the most part, you can say, look, Embiid doesn't play make potentially as much as Jokic does. Jokic's passing is just another level. He rebounds the same. But then you could kind of counter that and being like, well, how actually good of a defender is Nikola Jokic? And look, maybe he's league average. I don't actually know the stats or anything behind it, but it's like clear as day that for me, that just the eye test, Embiid is better on that side of the ball, and he's so much more important to Philly's defense compared to if Jokic was missing. Would Denver's defense change that much? I don't know, maybe a little bit, But if Embiid's missing, their defense it's a joke for the most part, Phillies.
Jokic is definitely a good defender, a very good defender, but he doesn't have that dominant physical ability that Embiid has. And we spoke about this when we broke down Luka struggling against the Sixers, that as good as Simmons is, and the fact that he's right up there, number one or number two on the kind of the rankings of defensive player of the year, I think Embiid is just as big a part, or just as important as a defender for Philly. I think when you've got good wing defense, funneling players off the 3-point line into the key, you've got to have an amazing guy at the rim who's smart, tough, and got great timing. And I think Embiid is right up there with Gobert and his ability to change shots and make it difficult for guys to score at the rim. So I think that plays a part into the MVP discussion for sure, how good Embiid is defensively. But it's very tough to call, because in the head-to-head matchups, Denver won both this year, and Embiid only played one. I would love to see them go head-to-head one more time.
Yeah,
that would really be huge for the MVP race itself.
They might.
I just checked. I don't think they do.
They don't?
Played each other once. Yeah, It's a bit sad, because I do remember at a critical point in the season last year, and Giannis had a game against the Lakers. LA came into Milwaukee about, 15, 20 games to go in the season, and Giannis had a monster game, triple-double. They took the win by 4 or 5 points, and Giannis did a big clutch dunk and then put the little crown on top of his head. So
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of moment, could be huge down the stretch. And I don't know how much you caught of that double overtime performance from Jokic yesterday or the day before.
Not much. Yeah.
But that was special, and that's the kind of those kind of statement games I think could make a difference. Who's able to have the biggest, most memorable performance in the last 15, 16 games to kind of take that mantle, and that could really steer the MVP conversation to one player or the other.
Yeah. So we got it sucked in the end because Brooklyn didn't actually play KD, but Embiid obviously led the way to get the win over Brooklyn. He led the way to get the win over the Clippers. I wish Kawhi was playing that game, because it just makes it look much better if we're able to get a win against a fully healthy team, so there's no asterisks against all these wins. But I think today could potentially be a statement win for Embiid and his MVP candidacy, if we can. No Simmons, no Harris, up against Phoenix at home. Phoenix are playing everyone today, so if we can manage to pull that one out and Embiid's dominant, then you can add that to his resume as well as something you can really hold his hat on. So is there any hypothetical scenario so let's say Steph Curry continues his ridiculous run. Say he does it for another, I don't know, he doesn't have to do it to finish out the season, but say he does it for another week, and it solidifies Golden State's position in that sort of top 8 for the West, or has them comfortably in for the play-in. Does that push Steph into anywhere in the actual discussion for MVP? Because I know he's in it at the moment, but we've just mentioned it's pretty clear it's 1-2 to Embiid, Jokic, however you want to order it. But does Steph really push himself into that, three-man debate?
I don't think you really can. I think he's more of a fan MVP for me.
Gotcha.
Favorite guy to watch. This absolutely incredible player to just see what he does every night. You know what he's doing at certain times, and you still are amazed when it goes in. He's a special player. But I think when it comes to that conversation, that I kind of parallel what he's doing this year in a different way, similar to what Westbrook did when he won his MVP. What did they finish? 5th, I think, in the West.
Yeah, that's a rare scenario.
Because no one's really won the MVP when their teams finish that low in the standings. But it's just the sheer kind of amazement and the sheer, something that we've never seen before. Something that's he's just playing on a special level that it doesn't really matter where his team's at as long as they're winning. He's just putting on such a show that he deserves some legitimate noise and some legitimate consideration to be the most valuable player. And there's no doubt that Golden State Warriors, that team is not very talented. outside of Stephen Curry. Without Clay on the floor, that team really struggles for talent. And the way that he's playing right now, if he can keep this going for a couple more weeks, it'd be straight legendary stuff. But one thing that might be working against Steph a little bit is that he has had a season like this before. Obviously, his unanimous MVP season where he was just the numbers, they parallel what he's doing right now. He's even scoring a little bit more at the moment.
Yeah.
But I suppose we take that for granted, but in the same way, it feels like in some ways, okay, this is just another superstar Stephen Curry season. And it just hasn't had that bigger impact, I suppose, for him to be MVP. But for me, it's more of a fan MVP. I think that he'll get.
Yeah, no, thoroughly enjoyable season nonetheless. This has been ridiculous to watch him. And hopefully Clay comes back healthy and they can just continue on. But yeah, this has been a legendary season for sure by Steph. Okay, so speaking about Golden State and the play-in, we've come up with some scenarios. Did you want to take the lead or do you want me to take the lead? Because the thing I'll preface this by saying is, and I mentioned this to you, my understanding was it was 10v7 and 9v8 as how the play-in would work, but I was wrong. I found that out the other day that it's actually 7v8 and 9v10. So the winner of 7v8 gets the 7 seed. The loser of that 7v8 game plays the winner of 9v10 for the 8 seed. So hopefully that's not too super confusing for people listening, but that's the gist of how the play-in scenarios actually work. So I know in the bubble, if you were the lower or the higher seed, if you were the worst seed, nonetheless, you had to win 2 games to get that play-in spot, which is what Portland did to beat Memphis twice. And I'm not sure how the East panned out. I can't remember. Was there a play-in game for the East? No one was close enough. That's right.
Too big a gap.
You need to be within 4. That's right. So what do you think for the East as your either fantasy or realistic or something you'd like to see for the play-in games?
I think I've gone with something that I think a matchup that will be realistic, I feel, but also one that I really want to see. I think when it comes down to the 8th seed and who's going to be playing in that final game for the last spot, I think as well as they've been playing, I think the Knicks might be in that matchup. And I think, and the team is struggling a little bit is the Hornets. I think they might drop down and get into this game, but I like them in a 1-game scenario. I really have enjoyed watching Charlotte this season, and some positive news that LaMelo Ball might be returning.
Definitely,
he's back to basketball activities and could be back within a week or 2. So that's important for the Hornets. Yep. And Gordon Hayward, I think if they are able to make into a play-in, originally the timetable for him was 4 weeks, and that was at the beginning of April. So I think we could see Gordon Hayward again before this season is all wrapped up. So I like that about the Hornets. And just as I said this, as I've written this about the Knicks, like a little bit of recency bias, but they're playing as good as any team in the league right now. Like they're 7-3 over their last 10. Yep. And there's no doubt that them, along with the Hornets, the biggest underdog stories in the Eastern Conference. There's no doubt. Like no one thought that either of these teams would be in the playoffs, and right now they're both inside the 8, which is pretty freaking remarkable.
It is.
And I think the Hornets deserve a bit of respect because they've floated around 500 even after these 2 pretty devastating injuries for their lineup. What I liked from New York the other day was they hit 18 threes in a game to close it out at home. And you look at their roster and it's just not that talented. Like, I don't know how they keep getting it done. They find ways to win, and you got to give them some respect for that. The Hornets, in the matchup in between these 2 teams, I reckon it would be really interesting because the Hornets' strength is their outside shooting and the way that they shoot from the perimeter. With Gordon Hayward back in the fold, I reckon they're a very tough team because the consistency of Rozier this year has just been incredible. And I think he's proved before in Boston that he's a big time player and that he can get it done in the playoffs. So I'd love to see him in a matchup against the Knicks. And what more can you say about the Knicks? Their defense has been awesome. And basically on offense, it's a 1-man wrecking crew led by Julius Randle. Guys he's thrusting himself into borderline, MVP discussion.
Yeah.
He is averaging in the last 15 games 28 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.5 steals, 2.5 threes. There's Julius Randle. Like 3 years ago, he was just a double guy who would just bang and when he threw up a three, you'd go, oh, what's he doing? Now he's making 2.5 threes a game, shooting close to 40%, scoring 28, dropping 7 dimes. He's really been inspirational, and I just think this would be a really fun matchup.
Yeah, no, you're right. I had something similar, but not the exact two teams. So you can jump into your 9-10 before we can come across to me. But yeah, I think all the points you make are pretty valid there. I think it'll be, Charlotte and the Knicks only played the other day as well.
Yeah.
So it was good to see those teams battle. It was for the most, the first half was a bit of a points fest, but the second half sort of came back to earth with how I potentially thought a Charlotte Knicks game would go. And PJ Washington stroked it from deep early. Rozier got a little bit hot. Who else played
Bridges
well?
Has been good.
Yeah, he has been great since Hayward left. But yeah, I think in the end it was just, I think the Knicks just kind of have too many guys, and they were missing Burks as well, so they could have had him in the fold as well.
Barrett and Bullock shot the crap out of it in that game.
Yeah, Barrett never hits 5 threes.
Expect.
No,
I know. So they're getting these performances that you don't expect, the Knicks, and I think D'Rose ended up with 17. He had 10 in the fourth, so he was a clutch player for them. They're really getting it done. I like what the Knicks are doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Do you have a 9-10? And then who you think will then end up with the 7 and 8 seed winning those 2 games?
I think the hand might have been forced by injury because Washington, their team is on the rise. They've won 5 out of their last 6. They've got Russ and Beal in the lineup right now. And the reality is that Chicago don't have Levine in the lineup. He's gone into protocols. He's going to be out for another 6 to 7 days, it seems like, minimum. I think it seems like from what I've read, there's a chance he might have tested positive, which is not good. I just don't see Chicago really being able to win any games without Levine. I like their team overall and the pieces they've added in at the trade deadline. But if they don't have Levine, it's going to be tough for them to win more than they lose down the stretch. And I expect Indiana to be in there. The reason I put the Knicks down is because I kind of expect Boston and Miami to have a superior run in the last 15 games than the Knicks, dropping the Knicks down into the 7 seed. And then I think Washington do get over Chicago and make it into that playoff. Yep. And then I probably think that Washington could take care of a team like Indiana, because I just read yesterday that Miles Turner is not looking good. It's not looking like we're going to see him for the rest of the season. He's done a toe injury. He's got a plantar tear in his big toe. So he's indefinitely out. Sabonis has missed the last couple of games with a sore back, so he's playing through injury at the moment. Jeremy Lamb's injured. Doug McDermott's injured. And we know we've seen the struggles of LeVert. So I'm not convinced by anything going on in Indiana right now. I think it's more likely that Washington would beat them in a one-off game, and then it would come down to probably Charlotte and Washington for that last spot.
Yeah, well, now this is where we start to hit on the same. So, look, my 7v8 is Miami's in the 7 seed for me. Charlotte's in the 8 seed. I think Miami win that. Just playoff. The playing game is just, I think it'll be quite similar to the playoffs anyway in terms of how the game goes. It slows down. It'll be tougher to get open looks. Things will be more physical. That plays right into an experienced team like Miami's hands. So I think they take care of business with that and secure the 7 seed. And then I've got the same. So I've got Pacers finishing 9th, and I think Wizards jump and they finish 10th. So I have the Wizards winning that game. So it's Wizards v Charlotte. And then it's hard to go past, again, the Wizards just with Russ and Beal in that playoff type.
In a one-game scenario, you just know that Westbrook's going to have his imprint all over the game. And he's not going to go down easy. No way.
Yeah, no way. So I couldn't pick against them. So similar to you, I have Chicago missing out. So they have the hardest remaining schedule out of the teams that are currently between the 7 and 11 seed In the East, Chicago have the hardest. 12 of their 15 games are against opponents that are 500 or better to finish out the season. So, I mean, the start to today's game hasn't been great against the Cavs. I saw they're down double digits at halftime. I think they scored 12 points or 14 points in the first quarter alone. So Chicago definitely are in a bit of strife. And Vooch tried to get away from Orlando and all those injuries. You know, for how long was it just Vooch and crap with Orlando when they got all those injuries? And now it's, for the most part, you lose Levine and Vooch and crap. So it's almost like he's transferred from Orlando to Chicago. I mean, they got a really nice win against Boston, but I just can't see them being able to do too much, as you already say. If it is COVID with Levine, then he's back to his normal self in a week. We know the after effects. It could be a 2, 3, maybe even a month it takes Levine to get back to his normal self. We know Tatum now says he uses an inhaler or a puffer before games, and he didn't before having COVID. So there's some after effects that can really have an impact on players for much longer than, you know, the 2 or 3 weeks they actually get COVID.
It's got a sting, you know, that's just worst possible timing for him to be
terrible
out
timing
and awful. And, you know, he's not even actually injured, you know, it's just a virus that he's caught. So very frustrating for Bulls fans, but, you know, they could have made some noise in the play-in, I think, but if not, they're looking forward to next year. I think they're in a better spot than they were 6 months ago.
Yeah, super valid. The only thing I'll throw into us, I really hate that I'm saying this, but Toronto are half a game behind the 10 seed. So I'm definitely not a believer, but shit, they're definitely worth keeping an eye on, because they've obviously sucked this season. But if, you know, now that Freddie is back and Kyle Lowry's back, and I think Siakam's back today, based on everything we know about the Raptors team and who their coach is, and, you know, the fight and the never say die attitude, it wouldn't be shocking at all if they just make one last 3-week push to see if they can get to the play-in, and then anything can sort of happen.
Absolutely.
Would you be surprised?
I would be a little bit surprised, but I think it would come down to I checked a bit of the Toronto game this morning before. Good to see Larry back out there. Yeah. He's the guy that'll make the difference. If he plays a lot of the games down the stretch and they get into a rhythm, it'll be because of his leadership and his alpha dog play and kind of pushing them to win. They're not a team that I would want to see in a play-in game, but something that will be very interesting in the play-in game is what will be kind of the weight of home court advantage. You know, in a one-off game, it could mean a lot, you know, especially if you're a stadium with 50% or more capacity. You could really see, you know, guys kind of shun away from the pressure and feel that pressure out on the court when it's a playoff game and everything's to play for and the crowd's extremely loud and you're down and things aren't going your way. So I look for that to be important. And I guess in that sense, it kind of works against Toronto, because even if they did get in, they would probably almost definitely be playing a road game, but they don't really have any home court advantage. And I think that's just another thing that I don't really believe, I guess, that Toronto can make a lot of noise this year, because it's just been one of the years from hell. And sometimes you just got to say that it hasn't been our year, and then we'll try again next year.
Yeah, so it's a great way to sum up their season. It has really been the year from hell. Everyone kind of freaked out at the start of the season. I was one that was included in that. You were much more on the side of, no, they can, you know, bring things back. Veteran team. They won't let a two-week poor period really determine their season. But then they got hit with COVID as hard as anyone. So that really put a hole in their season for sure. The West. So I'm happy to kick things off. This is where things get really, really juicy. So my 7 seed is Golden State.
7 seed.
My 7 seed is Golden State, us. So
what, are the Mavericks pushing up into 6 now, are they?
No, the Mavs slide to 8. So
wow.
The reason why. That's Golden State have the easiest remaining schedule out of these 4 teams. So they only play 5 teams that are 500 or better in their last 15. They
Dallas is pretty easy as
Dallas
well.
sit just behind him. So Dallas is 6 out of their 15 are 500 or better. So I just think the way Steph's playing, I think he can continue it for at least another week to 10 days. Not necessarily saying he drops 10 threes a game, but I think he can still consistently be a pretty dominant 30-plus point scorer a game. They're starting to get some guys back in terms of Oubre is now back in the lineup, and he's actually been coming off the bench. So they've put Kent Bazemore into the starting lineup, and now Kent Bazemore brings a little bit more stability. You know what you're going to get. He's got experience with playing with Steph in the past, pretty reliable player. And Oubre can just not necessarily be a gunner off the bench, but he can kind of come in and really try and make the most of being up against other teams' second units. So I kind of like the way they've been trending. I'm a little bit of, just give me a reason to see more Steph. So those are the two for me. 7, 8. I then have actually have Golden State winning that. I think Golden State beat Dallas in a 7v8. And then my 9v10 is Memphis v Spurs. So with Memphis, God, they're so good on the road this season. It's actually been pretty scary compared. Their home to road record is quite surprising. I think they're 16-11 on the road, and they're barely 500 at home this season. So I do like Memphis's ability to potentially have a bit of a good run to finish off these last 3 weeks of the season, coming up against the Spurs. For me, I know you can get anything from the Spurs. They have had some pretty good wins as of late, but at the end of the day, I think Memphis will be just a little bit more desperate. They obviously had the heartbreak of being so close to the playoffs last year. So I think they managed to sneak by the Spurs in a really tough game. And then Dallas v Memphis for that 8 seed. And this is where I think Dallas win. So I think it's going to be another heartbreaker for Memphis. Look, they get Jaren Jackson back today. It looks like he's going to return against the Clippers. So that's great news for them. Finally. But I think it could be a little bit of, too little too late for them. Obviously, Jaren Jackson is going to need to come in and, if the play-in is less than a month, he's going to need to come in, find his feet, really get firing, because there's just not a lot of time on his side, not a lot of time on Memphis' side. And as good as a story as Memphis has been, I think when it gets to the playoffs and, times get tough and people are going under all these screens and letting Ja Morant shoot and, really making life difficult on JV, who's been by far their most consistent player this season, you're then going to have to look to a few other guys like, gosh, I've mentioned him a lot, but if you're going to need to look to Dylan Brooks to do some perimeter scoring,
he's balling of late.
That puts you in a bit of a hole. So this is where the Jaren Jackson Jr. side of things needs to come. He needs to come in and be ready to go. But I think it's asking too much. So Golden State get the 7 seed, Dallas get the 8 seed is the final result for me.
We're very similar. I'm right on board with what you're saying about Memphis. I think they're probably the key team in this in what will be the play-in. I think you're pretty off your head if you think the Mavericks are going to slip out of the 7 seed.
Yeah, they will.
7 seed.
You guys are sucked.
We're healthy right now.
You guys have
sucked. We've had a bad run, but we're healthy, and I think we're about to make another run as we close the season. Luke is primed for it. He's been playing well. But in terms of Memphis, I think in this little bracket, the team you definitely don't want to see is Golden State. I don't expect Golden State actually to, I think the regular season is as well as Curry's been playing right now. Even these games where he is absolutely incredible, sometimes they don't win that game. Like they need so much more scoring from all the other guys for them to win more games than they're going to lose in the next 15. So I think there's a chance even that Curry gets a rest in one of the games towards the very end of the season, because they're going to need 47.5 minutes out of him when it comes to the playing game. Like there'll be no time to rest. They need him out on the court. So I still think the Mavericks will get there, but then it becomes an extremely interesting matchup. Even I think Memphis versus Dallas, that's definitely no guarantee for the Mavericks.
No,
to
it's
win
not.
That.
It's not.
I really like how Memphis have been playing, as some of the stuff you just mentioned. Important to note, Valanciunas has been incredible of late. In his last 15, he's absolutely bloody killing it. 25 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 blocks on 70% shooting. In the last 15 games, he's shooting 70% for 25 points and 81 at the free throw line. So he's been killing it. Important thing about him is I didn't realize this until only the day before. The reason he missed that last game is a bit of concussion. So that's a bit of a scary thing because they're no chance without Valanciunas, I don't think. They've just got, they just don't have enough depth. But I have liked what I saw from Xavier Tillman. I think he's a nice little rookie. He's a good pickup for them. Interesting. I agree that I like Jaren Jackson Jr., but it just doesn't feel like there's enough time for him to get a rhythm. Like, you wouldn't want to be starting him and playing him 25 minutes to let him get his legs under him. Like, you need to win all your games. You need to be playing your best basketball right now. So it's tough for the coach. And I think you will have to make some tough calls to bring him off the bench. When you speak about the depth and how their random rotation of wings in Memphis at times looks really good because all of them can do a little bit, and other times it's like, who can we rely on in a clutch moment? We kind of like all these guys, but who's our guy? The way Memphis has been balling right now, Grayson Allen and D'Anthony Melton were huge in that game against Denver. They're both shooting close to 40% from three. And Dylan Brooks over the last 15, 21 points a game on 48% shooting. So he's having one of his best stretches of the year. So I like what they're doing. And I think you're exactly right that all of this is all well and good when it comes down to a playoff game, when it comes down to the crucial moment. Ja Morant makes all the big plays. And he made some huge plays in that game against Denver, that double overtime, but he also mucked up a couple of crucial possessions where it was his to take. And the shot that was there for him was the wide open three. They go under that screen and he still wants to hezzy jerk, try to get to the basket. And the reality is that he still can get to the hoop. But something that kind of is important about Ja's game is he needs to have the confidence to take that shot at the end of the game to win it for him. He needs to be able to shoot that jump shot. And as good as he is getting to the basket, his season free throw percentage, 73%. It's in Luka territory. I think Luka's 75 or 76.
What's up with that?
These two guys, and for the season, Ja's only making 1 3 a game. So he really doesn't feel confident shooting that. And I think that's probably going to come to a head in a play-in game scenario. When I talk about the whole playing game in general, I want to see Golden State. Everyone wants to see them, particularly in an elimination game. Whether it's that first one against the Spurs, which I reckon it will be them and the Spurs in the first one. I reckon the Mavs will have to grind out a super tough game against Memphis. And then I think that Memphis will go out in straight sets. I think they'll get folded by Golden State in that winner versus loser matchup.
Okay, interesting. So we both settle on the same thing, just a different order. The reason why I kind of do drink a little bit of that Golden State Kool-Aid is I look at that Denver game where Denver lost by double digits to the Celtics. They kind of blew it. The home game was an early tip. And then they played the next night in Golden State. And Steph dropped, was it 50? Or he was very close to 50 anyway.
47.
47 or something in that game. And that was a key example of one of those games where it's like, Steph just beat us. So there's always that. Yes, you can look at something like the Boston game where Steph also had a huge night, but Tatum had a huge night. And so that kind of ruled each other out. And in the end, Boston were able to get it done. So I think there's a case
in that one.
Yeah. So I do get your point. How if Steph has a huge game, then they're not even guaranteed to win. But I think there is some results that have shown that Steph can literally single-handedly take him to a victory. So it does depend on matchup. You're going to say Luka. Yeah, you're going to say Luka. Yeah.
If he has a hot week, then we'll be talking about Mavericks pushing in. Guaranteed 7 seed, I reckon.
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to how teams go in these final 3 weeks. Like, this is in very important 15 games. Like, and as you say, a lot can change in a week, a lot can change in 10 days. So
injuries are playing a big part in it right now.
You're right.
If your team's healthy, you've got a big leg up.
If you're betting on games and stuff currently, you need to really be locked into those injury reports because people seem to be coming in and out so frequently, late scratches all over the place. So it's going to be like that down the stretch as well. I know the Clippers are resting a lot of their guys for today's game against Memphis as well. So it's kind of a must win today for Memphis anyway, because they've got most of their guys. And, Memphis in their next 4 games, 3 of them against Portland. They play Portland 3 times in the next week.
In a week. That's bizarre.
They don't play them 3 times in a row. They play them twice in a row. Then they play Denver, and then they play Portland for a 3rd time.
That must be at least one game being made up. It must be a back-to-back that they were planning on playing, and they've had to add another one to make up for a COVID loss. That's what it's got to be.
I'm not too sure, but yeah, I think the one key thing I'll add to it is that the Memphis side of things, I would probably trust Anthony Melton in there at that 2-guard spot more than a Grayson Allen. I mean, you saw Grayson Allen in a big moment against your Mavs, missed both free throws, left the door open for Luka, and got punished.
That Denver game that I've referenced about 3 or 4 times now, in overtime.
Yeah.
In overtime, Grayson Allen made a great steal, fast break, went for a big left-handed dunk, missed it. Campazzo slapped it in off Grayson Allen's back, come down the other end, Barton hits a 3, and then we're going second overtime and they lose. So, it feels like every time Grayson Allen has a hot shooting streak, he's about to do something dumb. And for me, that's enough for me to go, all right, I need to trust someone else in the clutch moment.
Yeah, so I think it's not a bad spot to have a guy like Melton who can be a secondary playmaker, ball handler, and he can also shoot much better than Ja anyway. So I think if you're running with some sort of lineup, then that makes it really interesting. I think it's dependent on matchup then. If you have Ja, say Melton at the 2, you then have Brooks at the 3. Who do you then have at the 4? Depending on the matchup, do you have Jaren Jackson at the 4, JV at the 5? Do you have Kyle Anderson at the 4, Jaren Jackson at the 5? How do you sort of finish? I think that's a fascinating part to their team as well.
For sure. No, they've gone with Anderson a lot, and I think he's been very stable for them. But if Brooks isn't hitting outside shots, Kyle Anderson's not a prolific shooter, you need to make sure whoever that other guy is stretching the floor, because otherwise they're just not getting enough outside play. Yeah, agreed, definitely. And I looked as well to see. So the Pels are 3.5 games behind the 10th seed, but I'm done with the Pels. They suck. They won't make up that ground. Yeah.
So I was trying to look at them and kind of be like, Toronto could potentially push in for the East, maybe the Pels in the West. But you look at the last couple of games for the Pels, it's like their second best player behind Zion's been Najee Marshall for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that should tell you everything you need to know. Yeah, who he played for. So he's been super reliable. If Ingram goes down, he's a pretty quality fantasy pickup as well, because he slots in there quite nicely. Does a bit of playmaking as well. Had 7 assists off the bench against Brooklyn yesterday. So pretty underrated. Okay, so that kind of wraps things up. Again, Darcy and I have said all of these things, but we could be here this time next week, and the scenario has changed again. So this is why it's going to be an exciting finish to the season, because as much as we like to think we have an idea of how it's going to end, there's still so much uncertainty, which is, it's the beauty of it.
I think in particular, the East, there's a lot of uncertainty because at the beginning of the season, or even in the All-Star break, do you think that you've got Atlanta in the 4th seed and the Knicks in the 5th seed? That's just completely and utterly bizarre.
Atlanta played the Knicks today as well, which is another good game.
Should be a good matchup. And Miami, who are in that 7th seed, they're only 2 games behind 4th. So, Miami, if they were able to get their shit together a little bit, get Butler back on the court, they could be a home court team. It's a lot tighter in the East in terms of being able to jump spots with about 3 wins in a row.
Yeah. I'm off Miami for the record. They just don't have enough scoring. That's why they clearly made the Oladipo trade to get another scorer in there, and it sucked the timing that now he's injured, but
he's indefinite, so that's not good news for Heat fans.
The fact they can't put a time frame on his return is, it's worrying. Okay, so we mentioned it a couple of times who he played for, but we're going to do guess that player. You ready to go, Das? Or may as well just get things cracking?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first player. So drafted 5th overall out of Kentucky. Hates Lonzo Ball. And the final clue, he averages the most fourth quarter points in the league this season.
Good nugget. And I saw that in the game yesterday. It's the Fox, the Aaron Fox.
Damn. Okay. Good get. Okay, number 2. Hopefully this one's a bit harder. Plays on a contender in the East. He played a season in Detroit before getting traded. And he's one of the most underrated wings in the league.
Played a season in Detroit. God, I have to rush up on my Detroit basketball. Is there another clue in there? Is there one more little clue?
There's not, because with this guy, if I gave another clue away, I feel like it would butcher it and just make it dead obvious. So just try and narrow it down then. If it's a contender,
Brucey Brown. It's Bruce Brown. It's Bruce Brown. Is it Bruce Brown?
It's not. No, it's not. You got one more guess. You can have one more guess. Or maybe 2 more guesses, because this one's hard.
A contender in the East.
So plays on a contender in the East, played a season in Detroit before getting traded, and is one of the most underrated wings in the league.
Wings. Okay. What about... I can't think. Is he a Philly player?
No.
Okay. I'm out on it. I'm out. I'm not sure who we're talking about here. Brucey Brown was my best guess.
Okay. So it's Chris Middleton.
Middleton played for Detroit?
Yeah. Played his first season in Detroit.
Unbelievable. That's a good one, Chris.
And then got traded right away. So credit to Detroit.
He definitely underrated.
Yeah. Okay. So final one. Spent his career as a big playing with 2 teams that had an extremely ball dominant guard. He's from Switzerland and he has a terrible free throw shooting percentage.
The league leader in rebounds, Clint Capella. Yeah, for sure.
I knew I needed to take one of those out, but I couldn't think of which clue to take out.
He's the only Swiss player I think in the league. So.
Is he? I thought there was another one.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some Belgium or French guys or something. Yeah.
He's having an incredible season statistically. You know, he's eating glass like no one we've ever seen, and field goal percentage through the roof, blocking almost 2 shots a game. He's basically exactly what every team needs from their starting center. He's doing exactly what you want him to do. We don't need to find you the ball. You'll get it underneath the basket for dunks. That's it. And then you do all the rebound, all the dirty work for us. He's been integral to them being in the 4th seed.
Yeah, and now John Collins is back. That'll help. Bogdanovic has been playing well since he's been getting a lot of that 2 spot. Herder had a couple nice games as of late. And Lou Will has done his Lou Will things a few games as well, where he's come in and given them double digits off the bench to just give them that extra kick that, they sometimes have some poor nights from their backcourt. He's there to help out.
It would be funny if they got to the playoffs and Lou Will started balling and then he was playing great on defense and just being a big force. That'd be very interesting for the Clippers to see him thriving on a different team. But one thing I wanted to touch on was, what are your thoughts on Rondo and his impact already in the Clippers?
Well, they haven't lost since he's played, right? I think he's got
they grinded out a game.
Oh, they lost. So they've lost. My bad. They lost to Philly, but other than that, they've won every game that Rondo has played in. So I think it might be a 9-1 record or 10-1 record, something like that. So you've been able to see his just IQ to that team anyway. Comes in, just really knows how to set them up, and it's it was the issue the Clippers had. They didn't have 100%. A point guard that was a point guard. Every guard they had was sort of scoring or didn't really understand how to set up teammates or find Kawhi where he wants to be found or set up Paul George with any pin downs or, back screens or find Zubac down low to get him, going, get him active, him hungry. And Rondo hasn't even played with Ibaka yet. So that's another pick and pop that could destroy teams in the playoffs. We know playoff Ibaka.
For sure.
Playoff Ibaka and playoff Rondo.
The eye test tells me that he's their third best player already. Like he makes winning plays. He sets his teammates up. He'll shoot when he needs to, and he can still knock down that three ball. He showed how well he shot it for the Lakers in their run to the championship.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's ticked off another spot in their clutch lineup, in their closing lineup. Like he's the defender, he's the organizer. They've got the two amazing all-star wings. They've got Ibaka in the center. Now it's just a matter of whose night is it between, Morris or Batum or I don't know who else they got there, Terrence Mann if he's having a game, or Kennard. I think they've really shored up their team a little bit. And did notice that Kawhi is sitting out another game for a foot injury, which
I think he's missing the next week,
for him. Yeah, he's really sore, so he's taking some time off. So that's not a great sign. Yeah, reevaluated in a week for soreness. But on the positive note, Paul George has been really healthy and he's been killing it, absolutely killing it. Last 15, he's averaging 33 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, 4.3 threes a game over his last 15, shooting overall 53% from the field and 90 at the line. So quietly, Paul George is having probably the best stretch of his career right now. And if Kawhi can get back healthy with Rondo, hopefully Ibaka can get over his back injury and get back in. Clippers starting to, if they have a good couple of weeks here, they become a genuine contender.
Yeah. So they're not getting a ton of shine. And I get it. People have, the memory of how they went in the bubble. And so they're hesitant to put any, they're my championship pick label on them. But I think different team. I think you can start to really evaluate them a lot different now that they have Ibaka in, they have Rondo in. There's been a fair bit of turnover. I don't know how much of the staff Ty Lue changed from when Doc was there, but I think as well people can overlook that scenario. There's a lot of things that played out in the bubble that wouldn't normally happen in, a normal situation where there's, you're in an arena, it's packed out with fans, you're on the road, all of this sort of stuff. So potentially you can look at that as just a one-off. I would like to think that anyway. And I think the Clippers are much more of a threat than I've noticed a lot of people are giving them credit for. And it would not surprise me at all if it's the Clippers there in the Western Conference Finals. Like, no, I wouldn't be shocked. I think that there's a lot of, Kawhi's a free agent at the end of this year, I think, anyway. I think he can opt out. Yeah. But all the talk has been he'll re-sign. But I think just understanding the moment, the situation, I think, did Rondo sign a 2-year deal with Atlanta anyway? Or was it a 1-year deal? Yeah. So Rondo's there on the Clippers next season anyway. But I think they understand the opportunity ahead of them. Like, they can look at a team like the Lakers, crosstown rivals, unsure of how AD is going to be when he gets back, unsure of how LeBron's going to be when he gets back. And, that they can look at that and be like, now's our time. We got to really push hard. And they've played well enough and they've shown how good they can be at home as well. Other than that disgusting Orlando loss a while ago, they've pretty much hammered teams at home. And they've been pretty consistent on the road. They're pretty competitive. There was a desperate Portland team yesterday, even without Lillard. And the Clippers could have mailed that in. They could have. They could have been like, that. You know what? They did steal that. So there's a lot of positives to take away from the Clippers right now. And I don't think people should be writing them off, or I don't think people should immediately go, well, they folded in the bubble, so they'll fold again. I think that's harsh to label them that, given how the team currently is set up.
It's very interesting to see who they match up against, because they're so versatile. They're so versatile defensively. I think the Lakers obviously a mismatch for anyone, but right now they would be going up against
who would they?
Portland. Against Portland.
Interesting.
And have to say, I think Portland right now would be a long shot to beat the Clippers in a 7-game series.
I agree.
But I like Portland, and I reckon that would be very entertaining to watch. But yeah, tough to see them knocking over a consistent team as good as the Clippers have been this season. So I think when you look at the standings right now, they're 1.5 games behind Phoenix. So there is a chance that the Clippers could actually get that second seed, which would make that first round series slightly easier.
Yeah.
So Clippers, yeah. I think that there's not really a team that the Clippers are scared of, I don't think. Everyone's a little bit scared of versus the Lakers, but I think the Clippers were prepared for that matchup last year and they wanted it. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Again, it adds further to these next 3 weeks. We'll see how the seeding plays out, not just for those in the play-in, but how the top 4 fills out, how then those 5 and 6 seeds, because I think there'll be
in the West will be good.
So good, yeah.
Good to watch.
But there'll be so many people as well. Whoever currently is in the 5th and 6th seed, no one wants that 7 or 8 seed. You want a guaranteed spot in the playoffs. No one wants a situation where you could come up against a pretty hungry, team fighting for a seed in the playoffs as well. Portland would definitely be a pretty nervous team. I think they get Lillard back for the Portland play today. I think they get him back for the next game whenever they do play. So they're going to need him firing. We've said it all season long. Nurkic needs to get back to how he was in the bubble. Maybe that's too much of a task, but he's so far looked really bad. Kanter has been much better than him for the most part. And then, I think that the main issue with Portland that we see is defense, right? They need to be able to stop teams. Yes, they're explosive. Yes, Norm Powell's another, third guy behind Dame and CJ. Carmelo's chucking
the clock back.
He's chucking.
He's won in the clock back, though. They need it. They need the scoring.
In yesterday's game, he absolutely chucked dust. I know he had, I can't remember.
18 attempts or something.
Yeah, he might have had 18 shots to get 18 points.
Powell wasn't getting anything going.
No, Powell had a good game. Powell had 23. CJ had 28, but Melo had 18 points off the bench in 28 minutes, 5 of 18 from the field.
Shit. He's a pig. We know that Melo's a pig, but at least he's embracing that role, and so is Portland embracing that role.
Yeah. Okay, beauty. Well, that takes care of things then. Anything else you wanted to address?
Watch out for Anthony Davis making his return against the Mavericks tomorrow. That's Friday, our time. So
you do play a couple games against the Lakers, don't you? Actually,
yeah. It would be good to get them without LeBron and AD, but we'll take them with just out LeBron. It'll be interesting to see. Davis says he's 100% healthy, so very interested to see kind of how that goes. An interesting little quote here from Rick Carlisle. He said after our losing 4 of our last 5, he reckoned everything's on the table at this point to help the Mavs snap their losing streak. So he's saying stay tuned for potentially a change up in the starting lineup, because I know that Kleber really has been struggling. He's ice cold from 3. He's only shooting 32% from the field in his last 15. Tim Hardaway Jr.'s got a bit of an illness going on. Joe Rich, after having a nice little week, is completely cooled off again. So, and I've also got a bit of question mark on what's happening with Trey Burke. I want to see him get some minutes before the season is up. But one more thing that a 10-day contract that got signed that might be interesting is Austin Rivers signed a 10-day with Denver.
Good point.
Yeah, so watching that Denver game, even though it was an epic that they got the win in double overtime at home against Memphis, Campazzo played big minutes, lots of minutes, and basically his job was just to irritate Ja Morant as much as possible and just get up in him and defend him. And to be fair, he did a really, really good job. He was crucial and critical in them winning that game. But it's tough to rely on Campazzo for a lot of minutes, especially defensively with his size. And offensively, he was inept in that game. He was 0 for 6 from deep, 1 for 7 overall. So It got to the point where he was just not shooting. So you can't play around Jokic as a point guard and not shoot the 3. So we know that Austin Rivers can shoot and he can get hot. So I think we talked about it before, that playing with Jokic, I think would be very easy to slot into that lineup. It would be a lot of fun. He's going to get a lot of open shots. So I think this will have some positive fruits for Denver, getting Austin Rivers for a little bit. It'd be interesting to see how that works. There's definitely minutes for him. Monte Morris being out.
Yeah, that's the key thing. I'm always most nervous for Denver games when Monte Morris isn't playing now. He seems to be just as important as a lot of their key pieces now. He was already off the bench, but now the Murray injury has really heightened that and increased his value and importance to that team. So look, Campazzo's good. Like we do love.
Still
Campazzo,
keep some minutes for him.
But
we still want to see some minutes for him.
Yeah, we're not saying completely shut him out, but yeah, I think Monty still needs to be given the the primary slot there, and then bring Campazzo in to just cause absolute mayhem and chaos in playoff games, irritate, be the South American TJ McConnell that we've said, or have that Pat Beverly like grit. That's definitely will be a huge help for this Denver team as they head down the stretch.
It's just hard to see Denver having enough without Murray to score. Like, as well as Jokic could play an incredible game, have a 30-point triple-double, but how are they going to get to 100? Unless they're going to lock teams down defensively, I don't think they have enough to win a series, no matter who it's against in the West.
Well, it's a good point you bring up, because their main issue last year in the bubble was, how do we stop AD? Yes, we have Jokic and Murray, but how do we stop that? They tried everything. They tried putting Grant on him. They tried Millsap on him. They tried
Plumlee.
They tried so much. Yeah, they basically tried to put everyone on him except Bol. They didn't give Bol a chance, which I think is pretty rough. But they threw the kitchen sink at the Lakers to try and stop AD, and he still went berserk on him. He's a tough matchup to be able to find. So maybe, you want Aaron Gordon on LeBron. So I still don't know who they put on. I still don't know who they. Porter. Surely you wouldn't put Porter on AD.
You don't want that. But they can throw Drummond out there as well now with AD and LeBron. So Lakers, they're looking very formidable in the front line if LeBron comes back healthy.
Yeah, you might even need to put a Jermichael Green or something off the bench and start him and put him on AD, just to try and be physical and stretch the floor on offense. I'm not too sure.
A guy they need big minutes from, a guy who Denver need, who can actually do something, who can show that he's up to it, is Dozier, PJ Dozier, because he's kind of a tall, like point guard, shooting guard, who had some big minutes for them in that series against the Lakers a year ago in the bubble. So. Yeah, huge opportunity for him to potentially show that he's up for it in the playoffs, but it's a big ask.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's perfect. That's where we'll leave things. So we'll be back in the next week to do another one. Again, the key theme here is so much can change between now and when we next do the pod. So that'll probably determine what we go over. I'm sure news will create itself like it always does. The NBA never seems to disappoint. So there'll be always plenty of talking points as we head into the stretch run here to finish out the regular season. Things will get tight. Things will change. Players could get injured. Players could be back. And now probably what you mentioned at the start as well, speaking about Charlotte and their playing scenario, and LaMelo Ball's back. He's probably going to win Rookie of the Year now if he can come back and play the final 10 games or something, for example.
Edwards has been hot though as well, even though we've called him a chucker here on this show. But they're playing better basketball overall, which is helping his case.
Yeah, it is true. They are picking up some more wins.
Halliburton's definitely slid off.
Rookie Wall potentially has hit that, because he started off with a real bang, Halliburton, and pushed into the starting lineup, and now he's been pretty disappointing for the God. At least since the All-Star break, he seemed to be pretty quiet. I'm not sure if that's the move of bringing in Darrell Wright or DeLon Wright, just another guard that potentially does similar things to what Halliburton does, and maybe pushes Halliburton to be a bit more of a shooter, which isn't necessarily his strength, even though he can do it. But yeah,
to me that made absolutely no sense. Like, you had Corey Joe, like a bona fide solid third string point guard, and you bring in a young, probably second string, maybe even a starting point guard in DeLon Wright, when you've already got Fox and you got Halliburton. Like, another puzzling move from Sacramento that just makes no sense. I feel like Halliburton's probably feeling like you and me. He's just fed up with the lack of direction and the lack of, what are they doing, Sacramento? And I hate losing as well. So I don't blame him for having a bit of a slide here.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll discuss everything. But for now, enjoy the NBA. Seems to be awesome matchups on pretty much every day, every second day.
Chock-a-block.
Yeah. So hopefully this time next week, for your sake, Das, Mavs will pick up some wins, be on a winning streak. Embiid can get some statement wins for my boys.
Simmons and Tobias
can get back healthy. Saw a lot of people saying that very convenient that Ben misses today's game up against Booker. Like, no, he's not scared, mate. I'm sure there's a proper reason. I know Booker's cooked him a lot, and there's the, Kendall Jenner history, but like, Ben's not scared of Devin Booker.
I don't think he's scared of anyone, but he's probably scared to take a 3-point shot. That's one thing.
He is scared of that. Yes, very true. Yeah.
One little bit I had here as well. You got to keep an eye out on Thibault while he's getting some minutes because he might be playing on the Australian Boomers team in the Olympics. He threw down a monster dunk. Did you see that? He threw down a windmill for the ages, windmill. And that just to remind you that this guy is like African American athletic. Like he is an NBA level athlete. So I want to see more of Matisse Thybulle. Shout out to the Aussie for a big jam.
Yeah, well, I think he's top 5 in steals, yet he's only playing 20 minutes a game off the bench. So it's like, how's that fair?
He's a magnet, defensive magnet.
Yeah, he leads. I think he leads in league. Does he lead the league in deflections? He's somewhere there. You always know he's around there, but there would be blocks, steals, deflections, shots contested. All of those stats, Thybulle is up there. He's if he can really take ownership on and improving his offense a little bit more and get consistent minutes, then he's about as good a shout as anyone as well for someone who could be a future defensive player of the year because he does just about everything you want to see. Certainly have been some questions with how does he go defending like a Tatum 1-on-1 and all of that sort of stuff. But those guys are super hard to defend anyway. But yeah, that's something to watch and evolve. And as you say, the key link there being now that he's going to suit up for the Boomers in 2 months time in July or 3 months time.
Come around very quick.
That'll be great. Hopefully Aaron Baines can get back to playing like a normal human as well and not be this like bum he's been in Toronto. That's almost been one of the subplots of the season that's been so disappointing. If Baines continued how he was playing in Phoenix with this Raptors team that now clearly needed someone to fill the Ibaka and Gasol gap, they could be completely different. But
definitely, it sucks for those Australians who haven't had that bigger role. Mills had a pretty strong season. So is Ingles.
But Jingle's been good.
Yeah, disappointing for some guys. Broke off out of the league. You know, Dante, a couple of shining moments at the very, very beginning for Cleveland. Now another wasted season. Delhi missing so much time with concussion on a non-winning team. So hopefully these Aussies, those ones who are still going to be there in the playoffs, will be keeping a keen eye on them. Also, shout out to Shyla Heel getting drafted number 5 overall in the WNBA draft.
Yes,
Sydney girl. So good to see the Australian hoopers getting it done in the NBA.
Yeah, and she's going to a pretty stacked Chicago Sky team as well because they just signed Candace Parker. So, pretty good situation to find herself in. I think Chicago, don't they already have Deladon as well and a few other. Well, they did have Deladon at one stage anyway. So the Chicago Sky were a pretty stacked team at one stage anyway. But I think the Candace Parker signing is a pretty big statement nonetheless. So pretty cool situation for, Charlotte to find herself in. Okay, beauty. Right. We'll leave things there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Das and I, we don't want to talk about locks too much because we both suck. If you've been taking our locks, you're probably broke. Yeah, you're probably
but we're still due.
Yeah,
and we'll definitely still release a playoff picture. Some bets for the playoffs.
I think when the playoffs roll around, Das and I can start to really give picks as well with a lot more certainty. We know the regular season's such a crapshoot with how teams and players perform different on a night-to-night basis, and you're just much more certain of what you're going to get in the playoffs. Guys will be up for games. So, stick with us. Make fun of our picks if you want, but, it will only take a week or 10 days for one of us to get hot, and then we're looking at 500 or better, and, then we'll see who's laughing. So,
good boy.
All right, Das.
Let's end it on a good note.
One for one. Mike Breen. Okay.
All right,
soon.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening, guys.